Hey you, welcome to the Grey Talks podcast. Talks about grey thinking, social skills, communication, personal development and team coaching. Because in a world that is black and white, we can all use some grey. My name is Lisette van Putten and I will be having these talks with you. I'm a social skills teacher and coach and I will be sharing my thoughts, knowledge and practical tips to create your own greatness. So stay tuned and enjoy this brand new episode. Another book review, let's go. Welcome to episode 8 of the GreyT Talks podcast. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about another book. So it's another book review. I thought it was time. And we're going to talk about this little book written by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And even though it's little and you can put it in your pocket, it's a very powerful message that's written in here. It's a manifesto of 15 suggestions on how to raise a child to be a feminist. So we're going to go through the 15 suggestions. I will let you know what is written and just have a talk with you about it. I'm going to put it away again because otherwise, you know me, I'll be waving this book around all the time. Not going to do that. So for starters, I'm going to talk about feminism and I just want to have a little chat about the fact that a lot of people think that when you're talking about feminism, it's about burning bras and liking women and having to talk about gender roles all the time, anytime, 24/7. So, um, partly those things were happening as an act of feminism and are happening as an act of feminism, but it's not all that. There's more to it. Um, and the most important thing is that it is about inequality between gender roles. And that's also written in this book and in these suggestions. And we're going to talk about that. And I think it's important to talk about that because we tend to actually stay away from certain subjects just because they seem scary. But I think that is because we are maybe not well informed about certain things. We don't know enough to actually have an opinion about something. And I think it is important to address certain topics that might feel uncomfortable, um, so that it is possible to get more informed about the topics and to actually be able to form an opinion about it and share perspectives. So that's why we have these great talks, and today it's about feminism. Before we're going to start with the suggestions, I think it is a really interesting read, also because the perspective is really interesting. It's written as a letter to her friend who asked the writer how she could raise her daughter to become a feminist. It's a really nice read because there are like personal anecdotes in there. And I mean, it's like they are having a conversation, even though it's a letter, like that's one way. Um, but it's a nice read. So I think it's a very interesting question to ask a friend, like how can I raise my daughter to be a feminist? And even though it's written from the perspective in raising a daughter, I think it translates well to any child. And that's because feminism is bigger than just the women and the girls that are in this world. Let's start with the first suggestion. And I already love this because I am not a strong believer of having different roles in your life. I think you're one person that has different tasks within different situations. Because the first suggestion states that as a mother, you should see yourself as a full person and not solely define yourself by motherhood. You are a woman, you are having your own life as well, and you're doing your own things in that life. And one of the things is being someone's mother, but you are a full person doing other things as well. So one of the things that is suggested, like never apologize for working, and domestic and caregiving um, actions are actually not gender specific, but are gender neutral. So that is when you are a parent, you just have to share those tasks as well. And being a mother doesn't mean that you do more of those things. And that actually flows into the second suggestion, where it said that raising a child, you do it together and you divide the things equally. So it doesn't depend on solely one person. And even if time is not equally divided, it doesn't mean that parenting is not equally divided. It should be divided equally, and it's something that you do together. When you don't agree on something, it's not you versus your partner, but it's you and your partner versus the problem that you might be having and might be struggling with. The third suggestion is to teach your kid about gender roles. And one thing that resonated with me within this suggestion is because you are a girl is never a reason for anything. And I think that is um, an interesting take. And it resonated with me because it's something that I have heard plenty of times in different scenarios when I was younger, when I was older. So it is still something that is used frequently, that because you are a girl or a woman, um, you have to be a certain way or you cannot do certain things. And I think it's a very powerful message that it said that that can never be a reason for anything. And I think the best quote is written in this chapter. It's knowledge of cooking does not come pre installed in a vagina. So, meaning you cannot say that, oh, because you are a woman, you can actually automatically cook really well. It's a skill. It's something that you learn. So, and it's not something that only women can learn, but guys can learn that too. So, I think it's a very powerful quote. And something that is definitely not helping with this deeply conditioned perception of gender roles is, for instance, the children's toys and clothing. There are always two sections. There are boy sections, there's a girl section, and there are a lot of differences in clothing when it comes to colors. And also with toys, the toys for girls are more passive things with like dolls and such, and the boys section has more active toys. And a suggestion that is written in this book as well for stores says that you should actually arrange toys by topic and not by boys and girls. And even when it comes to gender neutral clothing, they're not like vibrant colors of any. So maybe it should just be arranged by type and by color. So you have shirts and they're just like arranged by different colors. Um, and long sleeves and short sleeves and no sleeves or something like that, or and shorts like short lengths, and then just by size and color, and that's how you can actually arrange a store where there's not like a boy section and a girl section. I think that that is a great suggestion. I think that that would be really helpful to actually unlearn that deeply conditioned perception of gender roles. And that doesn't mean that you are not allowed to have your girl wear pink and have your boy wear blue, and have your daughter play with a doll and your son with like monster trucks. Of course, that is fine, but the way that it is actually arranged in stores, also that is also nourishing that perception of the gender roles, suggests that it's not okay for a girl to play with a monster truck and to like give your son a doll, even though that should not be an issue. Suggestion 4 is about feminism light, and Chimamanda explains it as something that you think would be considered feminism, but is actually still implying that a man is superior to a woman. For instance, when it's said that a man allowed his wife to work. I mean, allowing to do that already suggests that it might not normally be the case, but I allow you for you to do that. So it's about the power that um the man thinks he has in this situation, where it's like, yeah, I allow you to work, which can be portrayed as feminism because, yes, his wife in this example is actually working, but it shouldn't be that he allows her to. It should just be that she is working, and that is just a fact. So with this Feminism Lite, it is said that female equality is conditional, and it's not just fact. So there's always a reasoning behind it. There are always conditions or requirements that need to be met in order to have that equality. And it's not just plain fact. Suggestion 5 is where Chimamanda says that it is really important to read books. It is really well put that even though that I work in education myself and I am a teacher, and I do believe um, that it is beneficial to receive education, but as she put it, reading books will educate you better than most of the educational programs, because books teach you everything that you need to know, teach you about the world, about different views, perspectives, different topics. I'm a really slow reader myself. That's why every fourth episode is a book review. Um, but I think it is really important to read books, to learn different perspectives, to get curious about certain topics, to be able to discuss them as well with people that have read them or maybe haven't read them yet, um, because it teaches you how to perceive your world and to form your opinions about certain things. And that doesn't mean that I say that certain topics that you are learning in school aren't as important, and they definitely teach you the things that you also need, but by reading books, it will definitely help you to get a better understanding on how the world works and how to form your opinions and to get insights on different perspectives and to actually learn who you are as a person and what you think and what you believe. Suggestion 6: always question language. We are using language to communicate with each other, and that is very helpful because it helps us understand each other as well. But there are words and ways of saying certain things that actually nourishes those inequalities as well, because it's a resource of our assumptions, of our beliefs. So the way we are pronouncing things and the words we use should be questioned as well. And why are we saying the things that we are saying in a certain way? When I first started doing stories on Instagram, um, automatically I started using "Hey guys" as a way of greeting my followers, and I stopped doing that because I came to believe that that is not the way that I want to address my followers. And now it's "Hey you" because I think it's more like personal and it's more authentic. It's because it is more about you, because I'm talking to you. And I think it is important to actually think about those things and to be considerate as well. And even though if you know you don't mean it that way, If you think that is something that is used in this context since forever, that is not a valid reason to keep using it like that, because the world is changing. So our language and how we address certain things can also change. Suggestion 7 is saying that marriage is not an achievement. There can be an overwhelming social pressure to actually conform to that norm, to that standard. Um, and even though it's a choice and you can get married, you don't have to. We should not raise kids that it is an achievement, especially girls are taught that getting married is the ultimate goal. And it is already changing more and more, but I think it's not changing enough yet. Chimamanda also mentions that like the woman taking her husband's name is definitely not an act of gender equality. I think it's a choice of whether or not you would want to do that. And there's another quote from this book that is about Chimamanda actually choosing not to take her husband's name, and what actually stirred up a lot of reaction from her surroundings. And I think this quote is actually really spot on. My choice represented a challenge to their idea of what is the norm. And I think that is happening with a lot of different topics as well when we are talking about it. And it's that norm. I also talked about it in a previous episode about social norms, about social expectations, and that pressure on conforming to certain norms that are in our society. When you are doing something not along those norms, not along what is normal, what people are used to, then it raises a lot of questions. You will get a lot of reactions. People will feel really uncomfortable with you doing something like that because it's not according to their own perspective and their own um, norms that they are valuing. And that is okay. They can value those norms. And if it's their choice that they want to take their partner's name when they get married, that's perfectly okay to do so. But why is it that when someone chooses not to, that it's considered weird, wrong, and is questioned a lot? I think it should be a choice whether or not you want to, and it should not be like default that you will do it, and when you don't, then that is something that is weird. Suggestion 8 is one of the suggestions that really resonated with me. And it felt as if she also spoke to, to me here when it comes to rejecting, like teaching your daughter. In this case, it is definitely, we are talking about girls here, to teach your daughter to reject likability. As a young girl, certain things that are said or done um, actually build up to having to be likable for everyone. You should be sweet, you should laugh, smile a lot, and be as likable as you can be. And then when you are an adult, then that likability can also be very troubling because um, it's not easy to set certain boundaries, to keep those boundaries, and to act on them um, because you are very considerate about other people's feelings. I think, of course, it's not about not acting as a nice person, but it's not a job of a little girl to make herself likable. It's her job to actually be her full self and actually like herself as well. I mean, I think that is something that we don't teach at all. Suggestion 9 is to teach kids about identity and the images that are shown through media, social media, that are also hidden in the language that you might use. And there is that certain image of what is trendy and what is beauty, and that changes over time as well. But I think it is really important to teach kids what that means and how that works. And it's not only about beauty, it's also about ability and achievement, and how that is dominantly white when it comes to the images that are shown in media. And that is something that your kid will perceive and will see as the norm, as normal. But what if they look different from what is shown? So it's important to teach our kids about inequality, about privilege, about pop culture, about those images that are out there and what they actually mean. And this is definitely not a message to only people of color and their kids. I think it's really important for um, white kids to also learn about privilege and inequality. And I think that is something that is definitely missing, and that can actually help in creating more allies. And I think it's really important because those kids are the future. And if we don't teach them different things, perspectives, ideas than what we've been taught, then we are just repeating the same cycle over and over and over again. And if we really want change, then we should teach them differently. And that will evolve. And in the end, they will probably be able to teach us more than we are teaching them, because we are just planting those little seeds and they will grow. But we should be able to nourish those seeds from that new perspective, from that change that we actually do want to see. And they will take it and they will make it their own. And in the end, they will come back and teach us to be way better than we already trying to be. Suggestion 10 is to be deliberate in how you engage with your kid and their appearance. And as I said, the book is written towards a daughter, but I think it is something that can be really helpful to any kid, because that can actually evolve into something that they really do struggle with. So to be considerate and to think about how you want to approach that and how you want to do that. Um, the suggestion is not to bring up like the gender inequalities, but actually to be more body conscious, and that way lowering their insecurities about their body. And I believe one of the things to be able to actually do that is to lead by example. And this is the tricky part, because that means that you're not only talking about their appearance and um, making them feel secure about their bodies and such, but also lead by example. So practice what you preach. Talk to yourself about your own beauty as well, because your kids will see it. They will hear you sigh over a look in the mirror. They will be able to see you cover up. So then the things that you are telling them don't stroke with the things that you are telling yourself or your friend. Or so when it's not in sync, and that will actually devalue the message that you are sharing with your kids. So it is important to think about how you want to engage with your kid and their appearance, but also be aware of the hidden messages, the messages that you think that are only for yourself or only in your head, because it is something that your kids will pick up on, and that can actually sort of undo the work you're trying to do with the message that you are sending out to your kids and talking about with your kids. Suggestion 11 is actually a suggestion to teach your kids to question the use of biology as a reason for social norms. Social norms are created by humans and can actually be changed. Biology should not be a justification of those social norms. So it is important to teach your kids, whenever biology is used as a justification for a social norm. So when they're said, because you're a girl or because you're a boy, those gender roles, those are created by human beings and it's a social norm and it should be questioned. It should not be, it's not something that you should ignore because we do have biology and we do have those differences. But when they are used to justify social norms, then it is something that we should definitely question. And that is something that we should teach our kids to do already when they are younger. Suggestion number 12 is to actually talk about sex with your kids as well and talk about that from a young age already. You don't have to go into detail, you don't have to share own experiences, you don't have to literally teach them certain things. Um, but it is important to give your kid the language that they can use to talk about it. And by being open about it and not have shame overrule this topic, but to talk about it openly and give your kid the language that they need to be able to express themselves when it comes to sex is something that is really important and I think is something that to me is the change that we do want to see when it comes to this topic. To actually get rid of the taboo and to talk about things openly. And this is not me saying that it should not be a private, intimate thing. It's still something that can be very private and can be very intimate. But I do believe that it's important that your kid feels comfortable and safe enough to share certain things, especially when things go wrong, that they feel that they can go to you and go to you for help and ask questions. And it's the same with suggestion 13. This is about romance, it's about love and relationships. And it's the same because with this topic, you should also teach your kid the language that they need to be able to express themselves. So, to be able to express their feelings, their emotions, their needs, and their expectations. Something that we talked about in another GreyTalk as well. Being able to express all that can be really helpful. And as a parent, it is important to actually um, teach them the language that they need to be able to do all those things. And as a disclaimer, it's written in the book. I said it in the previous GreyTalk as well. You're never your kid's friend. So it's not about sharing all the details, asking them everything so that you know everything. No, it's about teaching the language that they need to be able to talk and especially to feel comfortable and safe to talk to you whenever they need. Suggestion number 14 is to teach your kid about oppression. As a disclaimer, it's mentioned not to turn the oppressed people into saints, but it is important to teach your kid what oppression is, how it works, and how it can be changed. And last but not least, suggestion 15, teach your kid about differences. It is what the world looks like. The differences are normal. And it is the world around us. When we open our eyes, it is what we see. When we listen carefully, it is what we hear. Diversity is the reality of the world that we live in. And to be able to be part of that world, we should be taught that it's normal. So those were the 15 suggestions of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie written in her book, A Feminist Manifesto in 15 Suggestions. I think it's a really nice book. It's a short book. You can read it in one train ride. And even though it's written as a book on how to raise kids to be feminist, I think it has enough suggestions that you for yourself as an individual can be really considerate about and think about and how you can actually be the change that is needed in the world and get more equality when it comes to gender. And of course, in this episode, I'm also going to share a great trigger and a great tip. And as for the great trigger, I was thinking which suggestion um, actually triggers me most. And I actually was not able to really choose one. So I'm going to share three suggestions that trigger me. One being the gender roles and how that is so deeply conditioned. It triggers me mostly because sometimes I am not even aware of how deeply it is conditioned and how hard it is to unlearn the perception of the gender roles and just saying certain words, just by using certain colors, just by getting a certain toy. It triggers me, but it also, for me, it's also a little bit like numbing because I feel like I'm not fully equipped and informed to change certain things, uh, even though I want to. So if there are any suggestions on that, helping me out with my great trigger here, because I'm triggered by this, I want to change things. Um, and of course, I can do that by myself using certain, um, like, be aware of the language that I used and all the other suggestions that are also written in this book. Um, but to make more of a change when it comes to that deeply conditioned gender roles, if you have a suggestion, then please do, because I don't have a great tip on this one other than maybe if you own a store, be considerate and change things around, and the other suggestions that I mentioned in this great talk. But I'm definitely open to learn more about other tips that you might have when it comes to this specific thing. Another great trigger, the social norms. I'm not gonna elaborate a lot about it because I have this other great talk about the great expectations, the social expectations, and I will definitely go deeper into detail in the different topics that I addressed in that great talk, and just to take one of the topics out of there and create a full episode on that as well. So social norms, definitely a great trigger. My great tip would be to listen to my other great talk on the great expectations and to keep listening to the upcoming episodes that are going more in depth on those different social norms. So we're going to talk about that more. Last but not least, the suggestion that triggered me most was, I already said it, was the rejection of the likability. So reading about how girls are conditioned to make themselves likable and to like form themselves into different shapes to make them as likable as they should be, um, triggered me because I think it's alarming that it is something that we do. And I think as a great tip, it is really important that we definitely teach girls to reject that likability and to make them see that it's not their job to make themselves likable, and that it's more important that they are their full self and that they like themselves. Um, and as for women that might already be conditioned that they should be likable, I think boundaries is something that is really important. And as I said before, that is something that I need to do more and better as well. So I think it's a great idea to actually create an episode on setting boundaries. So I'm going to dive into that topic and I will get back to you when it comes to setting boundaries. Thank you for listening to this episode of Great Talks. Please let me know what you think, ask me anything, and spread greatness by sharing these talks with everyone you think needs a little bit more grey. Don't forget to be great until our next Great Talk.